This woman or this man, equal IQs, equal heights, equal levels of upbringing, and so on. Who would you rather be?
In this video, I'm going to be responding to Wheat Waffles' video about why men objectively have it better in the dating market.
Because of these 4 reasons, it is still way better to be a guy.
He gives 4 reasons, and I'm going to respond and debunk these 4 reasons, as well as share my own thoughts, giving you 3 additional reasons why women objectively have it better in the dating market. Let's get started.
Though dating as a woman does come with its advantages, such as these ones here, Reason 1. The proportions of what makes you attractive are more evenly spread.
What he means by this is that for women, all that matters for your attractiveness is looks. But for men, you have your social circle, you have your status, you have your money, you have things other than looks that you can use to make yourself attractive. And this may seem like a massive advantage at first, because there's all these things you can do, right? I actually addressed this in a previous video called the pie chart fallacy, in which I explained why looks being a smaller percentage of what women are looking for in a man doesn't actually mean that looks matter less. Addressing Wheat's point, although women's S&P is 80% looks, the looks threshold, the percentile needed for one to be competitive, is not high at all. You can be a below average woman, and it's still going to be enough to find a partner. For women, if you're average, you're pretty much all set. And these comments under Wheat Waffles' original video back that up. We all know that men have lower standards because they are more desperate. But not only are men's standards lower, I would also say that women just look better in the first place. And to support this, I'm just going to, this is anecdotal, but I think you'll agree with me, is that these women up here, that these look average or maybe slightly above average, except for this one. I think this one is a Stacy. But as for the rest, they are just right around average, maybe slightly above. But men who are on the same level of aesthetics, I'm not talking about SMV, women's SMV is way higher, I'm talking about just facial aesthetics, just face, right? The men who are on the same face level as them, you see them much rarer. Like if you go to the beach, go to a mall, and definitely if you go to a party or a club, you will see women like this everywhere. You will see them all the time. But men on this level, you see them much less common, much more rare. So I think there's inherent baseline attractiveness inequality between the sexes. I'm not just talking about SMV, I'm talking about just aesthetics, beauty. Women are more beautiful than men. So a woman with average body fat percentage looks good. We're talking about baseline, not if you have went to the gym for 3 years and you have a jacked physique. I'm talking about the baseline. Women by default look better. A man with average body fat looks bad. Most men find average women in their 20s quite attractive. A slightly below average woman is just plain looking, not ugly. Most women aren't attracted to the average male. Okay, we have this graph here that circulates all over the black pill community. How men rate women versus how women rate men. So as you can see, men rate women pretty evenly spread, but most women rate men as unattractive. And this isn't just explained by the fact that women are more selective in their mating strategy. That partially explains it. But I'm going to give you an analogy. Like consider if you're a high standards food guy, like you only want to eat gourmet food. You're like a high-end restaurant critic or something. Just because you have a high standard for food doesn't mean that regular food is just going to taste terrible to you. So being more selective doesn't necessarily explain why you would actually perceive the average person as unattractive. What explains it, I think, is that not only does it reflect that they're more selective, women just perceive men as not as good looking as men perceive women. And, if someone is perceived as beautiful, that makes them beautiful. So that just means that women are more beautiful than men. It's a hard pill to swallow, but that's how it is. Anecdotally, I see Stacys far more often than I see Chads. So if you go outside, you just like go to the mall, go to the beach or something, or if you go to a party or a nightclub, you will see Stacys. They're not going to be the majority, of course, but you're going to see them here and there. They're going to be quite common. But you almost never see Chads. Like you see a true model tier looking guy once every few months. It's more common to find women who are at the high end of attractiveness compared to men. So that's the harsh reality. Females just tend to be more physically attractive than males as a default. Again, I'm not talking about like if you go to the gym and you get all these surgeries and like you just default, like baseline, untrained. If you're born male, there's a greater than 60% chance that you'll be unattractive to most females. But if you're born female, there's a less than 5% chance you'll be unattractive to most males. And because of this, right, some guys have seen this meme. This is Pokimane, and it's like morphed with AI to make her into a male. And I would rate this girl here about a 7, and rate this guy here about a 5. So like this is the same genetics, same bone structure, same features, everything. But just changing the gender is enough to make you 2 points more attractive. And it's not just SMV, it's like she literally does look better. Additionally, makeup makes raising women's SMV easy. With makeup, in under 15 minutes, a woman can boost her SMV by 1 point. And for a man to do that same SMV increase would take over 15 months of gym and diet. So all that is to say, that it's very easy and very common for women to look highly attractive, but it's not easy nor common for men to look highly attractive. Just on a side note, when it comes to rating, a lot of guys rate men and women on separate scales in separate pools, so we assign the number 5 as average for both of these. But if we rate men and women in the same pool, on the same scale, like consolidated, matching looks across the genders, then I think the average man who is not obese is under 30 is a 5. And the average woman who is not obese under 30 is a 6. And with makeup, the average woman is a 7. So I think that on average, women should be rated higher than men if we're going to rate them both in the same pool, not rating the genders in separate scales. Now, to go back to Wheat Waffles' point, for males, the factors that make you attractive are more evenly spread. But what the opposite sex desires within each of these factors is more narrowly spread. And this may sound confusing, but I'm going to explain this with a chart here. Factor of male SMV. For each of these factors of male SMV, women only want one thing. Personality. They want the Chad personality. Confident, dominant, ultra smooth, charismatic, very extroverted. Money and status. They want rich and famous. Height. One word. Tall. Body. Jacked. Or ripped. Actually, even though male SMV may have more factors, that may make it seem more evenly spread, but the truth is that what women want within each of these factors is very narrowly spread. Compare this to the opposite with women. Factor of women's SMV versus what men want. It's a lot more evenly spread. Personality game. Of course, there are guys who like the party girl type, other guys like shy, introverted girls, even a girl with like bad social skills, is like a bookworm, doesn't talk very much, very shy, reserved. Still, there are lots of guys who are into that type, right? It doesn't really matter what your personality is. There's always going to be a guy who finds that personality attractive. Money and status doesn't matter. Height doesn't matter. Body, again, you just need to not be morbidly obese. There are guys who like skinny girls. There are guys who like chubby girls. There are guys who like athletic gym girls, like toned girls. There are guys who like every body type of girl. Okay, now, of course, granted, if you're getting into the morbid obese territory, then fewer and fewer guys are going to be attracted to that the higher up you go, but there are always going to be guys out there for you. So the fact that these don't really matter for women is actually a good thing for them because these aren't limiting factors for them, right? So we saying that, women's SMV is not very evenly spread, it's very narrowly spread because it's all about looks, but in each of these factors, what different men want is more evenly spread. So we think it's an advantage that many more things than looks matter for men, but this is not actually an advantage because women only desire specific forms of each of these factors. So the more things that matter for your SMV, it makes it harder, the more standards you have to meet. So let's take a look at this. The average looking man versus the average looking woman, another chart. The 5 out of 10 face man versus the 5 out of 10 face woman. Too short, dating on hard mode. Shortness, doesn't matter. Poor, dating on hard mode. Money doesn't matter. Being non-neurotypical, dating on hard mode. Relationships may get more challenging for men and women both depending on the extent of the neurodivergence, but for women, the difficulty increase is nowhere near as much as it is for men. Fat, or narrow frame, hard mode. Being fat doesn't really make it that much harder, and skeletal frame pretty much doesn't matter at all. No friends, dating on hard mode, again, also easily gets a boyfriend. If you are a 25-year-old and you have had never experienced intimacy, that's going to be hard mode if women ever find out about that. Or they find out, from your poor performance in the bedroom, they're going to find out, and that's going to make it worse. But for a woman, that same condition makes you have even higher SMV. Now for a man, if you have a small inches, if you're lacking in inches dating on hard mode, women, there is no equivalent. So as you can see, there are a lot more factors that matter for men other than looks. But that actually makes it harder, not easier. Although according to Wheat, women's SMV is 80% looks. And I would agree with that. The looks percentile threshold needs to 1 for 1 to be competitive. Okay, is very, very achievable for the average woman. And let's look at an analogy to really drive this point home, making it crystal clear. Which contest is easier? A challenge to do 5 push-ups? What matters is your strength. Basically 100% is just strength. Or a triathlon with pro athletes. There are a lot more things than strength that matter, like your endurance, your technique, your water intake, so much more things than strength matter. So more things matter. The factors may be more evenly spread. But which one is easier? Obviously, it's the 5 push-ups challenge. In other words, there's just one way to be attractive as a woman, which is to look attractive. But there are many ways to satisfy that one way. There are many ways to be attractive as a man, but within each of these ways, there's only one hard way to win at them. How to attract your life partner. Famous black pill meme. This means, because so many different qualities in women are attractive to all these different kinds of men, you can pretty much just be yourself if you're a woman. No matter what you are like, you pretty much can get away with just being yourself, and you don't have to change. You're beautiful just the way you are indeed is a reality for them. But for a man, if you're not lucky enough to have been dealt the cards that enable you to just be yourself and not change, then you're going to have to change. And change is a long, arduous process of self-development with a high failure rate. It often involves changing yourself in ways that aren't natural nor comfortable for you, and just so you can attempt to meet the standards that other people have set for you. That's the reality of dating as a man, and life overall as a man.
Whereas, for female football players, the most followed is an absolute nobody with 0 honours, credentials, or trophies, and is only there because she's hot. Meanwhile, you have the actual best player in the world who has dominated the sport for over a decade, won the World Cup twice and the Olympic Games, but still falls short in terms of followers. This shows, as a man, your value goes beyond just looks, whereas for women, it is still mostly looks.
And about Wheat Walls' point about the World Cup and the Olympic Games. This kind of is like a 2 sides of the same coin thing. Does it really mean it's worse for women? Because on one hand, Wheat's perspective is that all that matters to get to the top is looks, so it makes it harder. But I would say that makes it easier if you look at it from the other side, that all you need is looks. That you can get to the top with just looks, even if your skills fall short. Doesn't that also make it easier? It's really 2 sides of the same coin. Looks is literally all you need. That's an advantage in a lot of places.
Final step, it's extremely difficult for a woman to reach the top in itself if she isn't good looking to begin with. In the entertainment industry, have you ever noticed how the top female artists pretty much all have faces of 8s, 9s, and 10s?
Here's my response. This slide. And to wrap it all up, all of this top 0.1% Hollywood actor, a World Cup champion. The whole point of Wheat Waffles' video was to compare the average woman to the average man. So maybe looks matter somewhat less for men when it comes to reaching the top of the top. Okay, but this isn't something that the average man or woman is going to get to, and the whole point was to compare averages to averages. So why is Wheat even talking about top 0.00001% Giga Uber Chad versus Giga Uber Stacy? We should be comparing average men and average women with average lives. And about control, Wheat Waffles brings up a stat from a community poll that he posted. 64% of his audience said that men have more control in their dating lives than women. Now, control does not mean better. Would you rather just buy a house or even receive a house for free? Or would you rather receive a hammer and some wood and some bricks and just be tasked to build your own house from scratch? Sure, the second scenario, you have way more control. You have the complete control. But it's not better. It's a million times the effort and time. I agree with Wheat that as a woman, you may not have a whole lot of upward SMV mobility, but your baseline SMV is high enough in almost all cases to satisfy you for life. You don't need to increase your SMV. You don't need to work on yourself in order to get a man, get married, and start a family. As a man, your baseline SMV is far, far lower. Maybe you have more upward mobility, but just because you have more of an ability to increase it, is this better than what the woman has? If you've enjoyed this video so far, I recommend clicking the like button below as it helps this video perform in the YouTube algorithm. Let's move on to Wheat Waffles' second reason.
As we now move on to the second point, you see this is just the beginning of the benefits. Reason 2. The more women date and explore the world, the harder it becomes for them to date. But for men, it makes it easier.
First of all, I'm going to make this quick point is that it's not like, I know Wheat Waffles didn't say it's mutually exclusive, but I just need to point out that women do travel with their partners, right? So they don't just travel a whole lot and then they try to get a boyfriend and they have trouble getting a boyfriend. They can get a boyfriend first and travel with their boyfriend. That's something that they do. So it doesn't matter then if their dating market value is less because they're already in a relationship. This is a quote that Wheat said.
How many of you guys would want to date a girl who you found has been flown out to Dubai, New York, London, and had a bunch of other experiences, all paid for by a guy worth millions?
Now, how often do you come across women like this? I think this is probably less than 1% of women. Now, here's the deal when it comes to Wheat's points on desirability. He says, for women, it makes it harder. For men, it makes it easier. But women, especially the Stacys, okay, the ones who are being flown out by these millionaire chads are Stacys. For women, their SMV is initially way higher than a man's SMV. So even if it gets harder, their SMV is still much higher than a man for whom it gets easier. Just because it gets harder doesn't make it hard. And just because it gets easier doesn't mean it is easy. This graph illustrates this point. Let's just assume that Wheat is correct, saying that traveling the world reduces women's SMV slightly. So desirability before traveling the world. Before traveling, women's SMV is up here, men's SMV is down here. And after traveling the world, men's SMV is down here, women's SMV is up here. As you can see, the women's SMV is still way higher than the men's SMV. It doesn't mean that it's actually easier for men compared to women. Just to further drive this point home, would you rather live the life of a guy who was born into poverty and builds up his wealth to lower middle class by the end of his life? Or would you rather live the life of a guy who was born extremely wealthy, but he spends his inheritance such that he's down to upper middle class by the end of his life? Which guy would you rather be? I would rather be the second guy, because it doesn't matter that the first guy might have increased his social class or his wealth, that he still has a lower total amount of money. And same thing applies to women's and men's SMBs. And just on a quick tangent, it's like a Chad life versus the nerd cell's life, right? Maybe in high school, the nerd cell was the utter loser in the high school and the Chad was getting all the women. And let's say that Chad, he does drugs and Chad's life goes downhill. And then Melvin, the nerd cell, he studies a whole lot. He goes to the top university and his life goes uphill. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this, right? There are times when Melvin, the nerd cell, actually does exceed the Chad life. But I would say in most cases, just because you improve your life doesn't mean that your life is better than someone else whose life went downhill. All that matters is the absolute position of where you are in life. People do miss this key point as well. And I know Wheat was focusing on the dating market aspect to it, right? But people usually don't travel with dating in mind unless they're geomaxing. Most people, when they travel, they do it for the sake of traveling because they want to see the world. They want to explore the world. On his point about women being flown out by chads, isn't that a massive advantage that women get to travel the world for free? It's a massive advantage that they get to travel, and it completely outweighs any of the dating market value decrease that would cause, if any. It completely outweighs it. You get to see the world for free. That's the whole point of traveling anyway. Right? Wheat Waffles thinks it's an advantage for men because he was only focused solely on the dating market value aspect. Wheat also said at the beginning that a woman's past is part of the things that make up less than 20% of her desirability, right? He said 80% is looks. Well, if this makes it up less than 20%, then it's not a very significant reason. And furthermore, final nail in the okay, not yet, but there's going to be a final nail in the coffin coming soon, so stay tuned. When it comes to lying, according to Wheat, and I agree with this somewhat, since a woman has higher SMV, the more things she hasn't done, right? The less experience she has, like less traveling, less clubbing, less casual encounters. Since the more desirability a woman has, it comes from the things she hasn't done. So she can just lie. She can just lie, right? But for a man, his desirability increases with the things that he has done. But that means that he needs something to show for it. He can't lie. Like, if you have an adventurous lifestyle, like Waffles is saying, you actually have to have that lifestyle. You can't just lie. But if a woman has traveled the world, she can just lie that she hasn't. Right? It's completely different. And here's the final nail in the coffin, guys. Wheat Waffles on his second channel, Honest Waffles, he made a video in which he made a major point where he said that 90% of guys don't care about a woman's purity. So not only does the traveling experience aspect make up less than 20% of what makes a woman attractive, 90% of guys don't even care about that at all. So it just makes the reason very weak. Like, this traveling thing, it barely even touches a woman's SMV at all. And furthermore, he also made a video on Honest Waffles saying that traveling is the worst pathway guys 18 to 25 can do. So, about that adventurous lifestyle strategy, you can't even utilize this until in your late 20s. So this further weakens his point.
Reason number 3. In women's early 20s, they will likely have to choose between either their career and financial future, or capitalize on their beauty young and settle down to start a family.
You can actually start a family and then further your career or financial future. And that's what my mother's doing right now. She's doing business right now. Kind of agree with Wheat, but let's not forget to consider that having two choices is better than having one choice, which is the same as having no choices. What about men of poor physical genetics? What choices do they have? Well, they don't get to choose between family and career. They have to choose career. If you're a sub-5 woman, you still get to choose between career and family. Career is something you choose from preference, not necessity. If you don't like the higher-end education and career option, you can just choose family. You have the choice. But compare that to a man. If you're a sub-5 male, you have to go career. You want to get that money and status, and even if you want to go down the surgery route, you will still have to have money to save up to pay for your surgeries, right? If you're a sub-5 male and you're working at McDonald's, if you don't go the career path, I don't know what you're doing then. Like, your SMV is below sea level. As a woman, you have two choices. It sounds bad on the surface, but at least you have a choice. And furthermore, it's not even that difficult for women to lock down a partner while they're studying in grad school or medical school or law school. It's not hard for women to lock down a long-term relationship then. And here are my thoughts on money and status maxing. Just something that you might want to consider is that money and status maxing is an uphill battle with age, because for men, people's minimum expectations are going to rise from when men are in their 20s to when men are in their 30s and 40s. So even if you're improving your wealth, increasing your status, increasing your income, if you're not doing it at a fast enough rate to outpace women's expectations, which increase for men as they age, then your SMV won't actually increase, it will decrease. Because every other man in the dating market is increasing their wealth as well, you have to increase your wealth at a fast enough rate to outpace the continuously rising standards as you grow older. And IQ also, and natural ability and talent, they also play into this. So let's say you're a 4 out of 10, 5'8" guy with high IQ. You can career max and money max, and your SMV is going to go up. But if you are that same 4 out of 10, 5'8" guy, same physical, but your IQ is 70, your SMV will actually go down as you age, because you probably aren't going to increase your income at a high enough rate to outpace the rising expectations. On a side note, this is a complete tangent, okay, but there is evidence that money maxing is not always beta boxing. What I mean by this is that there's some evidence that women actually do have more raw physical attraction towards guys who are wealthy. I don't really know about this, but if you have thoughts on this, if you have knowledge on this that I don't, please leave a comment down below, and I'm going to look into it more. And here's Wheat Waffles' fourth and final reason before I get into my own reasons.
Reason 4 of how men have an advantage in dating. Bottom tier women aren't technically in the dating market. Rather, they're just in the short-term fun times market. Meanwhile, for bottom tier men, they are simply out of the dating market.
I'll split this into two parts. they're not technically in the dating market, Wheat Waffles claims. So he made this comparison between a kid at school who is trying to get into the popular group, but they're not actually accepted as part of the popular group, and they get made fun of and teased by the popular group.
When you was in school, there was always that one kid who thought he was part of the popular group, but in reality he wasn't. He was the butt of all of the jokes, always picked last for team games, made to do stupid, denigrating stuff, all for cheap laughs. That was the only reason he was there, and even he himself knew deep down this was the reason he was there.
And he compares that to a kid just sitting in the corner twiddling his thumbs. He doesn't have any friends at school.
Now, the point is, if I had to choose between being him or the other kid you saw in school who sat by himself twiddling his thumbs, I'd rather be the thumb twiddler, because at least he knows he's got no social status. And even he himself knew deep down this was the reason he was there.
I talked about being the thumb twiddler in this video on my channel, so check that out. I find Wheat's analogy to be unfair because being bullied in school causes trauma and mental health damage, so I think this would be equivalent to a woman getting mistreated by her abusive boyfriend. That's something that would be more equivalent to Wheat's analogy. And in Wheat's analogy, I also would rather be the thumb twiddler, but I think I can change that analogy to make it a little bit more realistic to the average woman on the dating market. So what I would say is that it's a kid who's trying to be popular, wants to be accepted into the popular clique, but they can't really get in. They're not accepted by the popular kids, but it's not like they're getting outright bullied either. They could make friends with kids who are less popular, but they're just a wannabe and they fail at being popular. And now let's see how this updated version of the analogy connects to the dating market. So the thumb twiddling kid is a man who cannot get a woman. The kid who tries to get into the popular clique but isn't accepted, that is like a woman who fails to lock down the rich Chad, but could get a long-term relationship with a man who has a regular SMV. The kid could make friends with people who aren't so popular. So if we look at this chart, dating life. At the top we have the upper echelon dating life, the endless attention, ideal partners, abundance of options. This is what Chads and Stacys have. Then we have the typical dating life, not a lavish lifestyle. You can get a partner, settle down, start a family, but nothing fancy. And then you have seldom. You can't get a partner. If you're a sub 5 guy, sub 4, sub 5 guy, then you're going to be here. You can't get a partner. But even if you're a sub 5 woman, you still can get the typical dating life, not a lavish lifestyle. But you can still get a partner without that much difficulty. And Wheat Waffles thinks that, with this example, he thinks that women who look like this are actually struggling to find long-term relationships in the dating market. Do you really think that women who look like this, slightly below average women, do you really think that it's actually challenging for them to get a long-term relationship and they're really like this kid who's just getting made fun of at school? Like, no. I mean, would you be the slightest bit surprised if you were to find out that the woman on the right got a boyfriend without actively trying? Or is married to a husband and has kids? Like, this is like a 30-year-old woman, like a teacher at school. You wouldn't be surprised if she had a husband, right? It's not difficult, okay? To take this further, I'd like you to just imagine any sub 5 guy you know in real life who, if he were to tell you that he got a girlfriend just by approaching one girl, that would surprise you. Think of a sub 5 guy who would surprise you if he were to tell you that he got a girlfriend on the first try. And I want you to put his face through Face app and change the gender. Use a gender swap filter to change his gender to female. And then ask yourself the same question, but with a boyfriend. Would you be surprised if this girl got a boyfriend on the first try? And I think that the answer will be no. The answer will be no, because it's not difficult, okay? With this example before, it is not hard. The second part of Wheat Waffles' reasoning, they're just in the short-term fun times market. Now, this claim, I think this is completely ludicrous.
As for women, they need to full on be intimate with a guy and wait for his response the day after to tell if he's serious.
This is a preposterous claim, in my opinion. Most of the women, if they're only looking for serious long-term relationships, then they would date the guy and the guy would have to tell her that he is also interested in a serious long-term relationship for her to be willing to sleep with him. Like, is Wheat really saying that women who are looking for serious long-term relationships just go on Tinder and just hope for the best without even knowing if the guy is serious. Yes, of course, not all women who say that they're only looking for long-term serious relationships actually are. There are some of them who say they're only looking for serious relationships are also open to short-term hookups with Chad. What I'm saying though is that it's unlikely a true serious-seeking woman would find herself in the situation Wheat Waffles described. If a woman is truly only looking for a long-term relationship, she's not going to be easy. She probably wouldn't sleep with a guy on the first date. If she's really serious about finding husband material, she would probably only sleep with the guy if she knows that he's serious. Wheat's example of an attractive man acting like he wants a long-term relationship and then refusing to give the woman commitment only applies to women who aren't truly looking for long-term relationships only. Because as for the women who are only looking for long-term relationships, why would an attractive guy with options go through 5 to 10 dates with a below-average looking woman only to pump and dump when he has other options who are better looking and are easier to sleep with? Women withholding intimacy until after several dates filters out guys like that because they're not going to want to go through all that effort. And even in 2023, still there are many people who do go on several dates, maybe over weeks, maybe over months, before they engage in bedroom fun time activities. People who are only looking for serious long-term relationships. Many of them still do this. As uncommon as it is in 2023 with all the promiscuity in the dating market, this still takes place. Furthermore, Wheat Waffles says that it's better for the sub-5 male because to him, there's no gray area that he's not wanted in the dating market. Wheat Waffles actually said that for men, there's no gray area where you can get led on unless we count the friend zone. So this ties back to the point that I addressed on the previous slide that somehow women will get led on and they will have to get intimate with a guy in order to truly figure out if he's serious. Well, men actually do get led on too, and they get led on, but they get led on for a longer period of time. In Wheat Waffles' scenario, if a woman is only looking for a long-term relationship and a guy tricks her into, sleeping with him and then the guy dumps her, that's just like a day she got led on. But for men, they get led on for their resources for a long time. They get led on for long-term relationships. Truth. Men get led on for their resources, beta bucks gold dig, and later discover that they were never desired physically. So women will lead them on for their resources, and they won't know that they're not truly desirable to that woman, and they will only later find out when they get cheated on. Men have it worse here because getting led on in the long term is far worse than getting led on in the short term is. This costs men their resources, whereas for women, if an attractive man pumps and dumps a girl on the first day, she just feels sad for a while, but doesn't lose any resources. Now, here's my first reason, not related to Wheat Waffles' reason, why women have it better in dating is that happiness is easier to obtain for women, especially when not participating in the dating market. So here is a massively generalized illustration of what makes men versus women happy. This is a huge generalization, okay? There's going to be a lot of variation. This is just what I think roughly the average man and the average woman looks like. Most of what makes a man happy is his dating life, because we can tell that men who are lacking in their dating life are usually very unhappy with their lives overall. The next biggest component is competitive success, and this is about dominating other men, winning the battles, being a warrior, being the best man, dominating all the other men, being better than every other man, just completely destroying those men. And social life and friends is also pretty significant, 10%, but hobbies make up a really small portion, 5%, independent activity. This is what I'm referring to with hobbies. Whereas for women, a much bigger portion of happiness comes from social life and friends. Again, huge generalization. Dating life and relationships is a smaller component. Now, I'm not saying that if a woman has a very good relationship, she's not going to feel as happy from it as a man. This is not so much how happy you feel from each of these things. It's more a chart of how crucial it is for your happiness, not how much happiness you feel when you have it. A dating life and a relationship is not as important for most women, and competitive success, very small. So women aren't trying to dominate all the other women, be the best woman in the room, be the dominant woman. That's not really going to contribute much to their happiness. It's not that important to them. And in independent activity, they can gain a great deal of happiness just from doing hobbies. Whereas for men, it will make them happy, sure, but that is not going to be enough to satisfy them. Again, let me reiterate, the purpose of this chart is not to show how happy will you feel if you have this. It's about how crucial it is for your overall happiness. Here's the thing, and you've probably noticed this pattern, right? Women are generally very capable of being happy as volcels or voluntarily celibate. Voluntarily not in a relationship, voluntarily single. But most men would never be voluntarily celibate. Almost every man who is celibate is involuntarily celibate. So you've heard a lot of women say, I don't need a man. And they are generally capable of having a satisfying life, at least temporarily, just for like a few years. Not permanently, but they are able to be happy with just a social life and a set of enjoyable activities. So if they have their hobbies and they have their friends, they do not need a boyfriend and they can be fulfilled. But for a guy, because social life and enjoyable personal activities make up a smaller slice of the pie chart, having a girlfriend is more critical to happiness. Because the social life and independent activities sections of the pie chart are small, and also the dominating and competitive success section is very big, that if you don't have a girlfriend, the main thing that you use to compensate for that unhappiness would be competitive success. But the thing is that it very correlates with having a girlfriend. So guys who can't get a girlfriend usually also are losing in the competitive success. Like, it's rare to see a guy who is very, very successful, dominating all the other men, top of the male hierarchy, and he can't get a girlfriend, right? These are very correlated. So if you don't have a girlfriend as a guy, and you also don't have the competitive success, then it's really going to be really hard for you to be happy. So if a single male does not have the status, the dominance part, he will be in extreme need of a girlfriend, as his friends and his hobbies play insignificant roles in his happiness. It's just not enough to satisfy him. He either needs to get a girlfriend or get that status and dominance, which would probably lead to getting a girlfriend anyway. Here's male and female happiness chart excluding the relationship part, right? Just to really reinforce this point, is that for a man, if you are single, just exclude the relationship. If you are single, you're gonna be really relying on that competitive success to dominating these other men as your main source of happiness. But usually, if you're single, you are involuntarily single, which means that you're probably a low status male and you're not gonna get that competitive success anyway. So really, your social life and your friends and your independent hobbies activities, that's all you have left. And that makes up a very small portion of what makes you happy. So it's very unlikely that you're going to be satisfied with your life if you can't get girls. But for women, if they voluntarily do not get a guy, they can still rely on their social life and friends and these hobby activities. And they don't really need to worry about this competitive success, this aggressive, sort of dominating, ruthless competition stuff. They can get a very satisfying and happy life with social life and friends and independent activity. Which brings us to this harsh reality. A lot of blue pillars say that guys should just hobby max. Even if they can't get a partner, they should just gain their happiness from their hobbies. But the thing is that when guys are not able to get a partner, since they're also losing in the competitive male domains, it's going to be very hard to be happy with just hobbies because it doesn't make up a very significant portion of the pie of what makes a male happy. And of course, there are exceptions. Like I said before, it's very, very generalized. That graph is very generalized. There are some people who just love painting so much, or they love playing the guitar so much. Or some guys, they just enjoy the simple things in life. They are completely content and happy just being a farmer. But these people are very rare. Most guys, they're gonna have to be getting girls or beating the other guys in order to gain happiness. Unfortunately, this means a large portion of male happiness is based on finite resources. Obviously, this means men have it worse in the context of happiness acquisition, as it is more limited. Because men compete more aggressively in the dating market than women do, it's much more competitive, right? The failure of a man to get success with members of the opposite sex produces unhappiness in two ways rather than one. So when a man has a lack of intimacy, of course, just like a woman, produces sadness. But because it is much more competitive, it's a more ruthless battle for men. When they are struggling in the dating market, they're also losing the game, and in many cases, that produces anger. So on the other hand, if a woman is struggling, she only feels the sadness, the first bullet point. So for men, not having a partner despite wanting one, involuntarily single, it generates more negative emotion because it generates sadness as well as anger, whereas for women, it only generates sadness. To take this further, there is a phenomenon that I call loser rage, and it's largely a male phenomenon. Okay, there's these guys who are at the bottom of the male dominance hierarchy. These guys who can't get girls. They're like a 5'2" balding guy, spending his time on black pill forums. And it really sucks for this guy, and he has loser rage because he has a very negative mental state because of his lack of success in the dating market and in life overall. But it's usually only men who feel this terrible and feel this angry. We rarely see women having this sort of predicament. Of course, women can be sad, they can be depressed for various reasons, they can be mad for various reasons, but we almost never see women having a loser rage state of mind. And loser rage happens when the guy has the desire or has like the brain of a warrior, but he has the body of a sub-5 male. So he wants to be the dominant male. That's what he's striving to be. That's what his dream is. That's all he wants out of life. But his physical form, the cards that he's dealt genetically, leads to him being dominated. And again, this is a problem for men. It's really a non-issue for women. As a man, you can never truly escape the brutal nature of the male competition in the dating market. And of course, by this, I'm referring to women's much higher opportunity to cheat and the fact that other men are basically looking to steal your girl if you're in a long-term relationship. Of course, there are exceptions to this, right? There are people who are very monogamous and they would never break each other's trust, but I'm sure you can acknowledge that, especially in this day and age, it happens all the time. So let's break this down further. Women's SMV is much higher than men's SMV. This is due to men's much higher reproductive drive. And of course, this will lead to women having a lot more opportunities than men to cheat. So from a woman's perspective, when she's in a relationship with a man, unless the man is some like rich giga uber chad, she doesn't really have to worry that much about the man cheating because the man doesn't have that much of an ability to cheat, if at all. It's kind of like she has actually locked him down, right? But if you're a man, you never can truly lock down a woman because you always have to deal with the onslaught of male competition. The woman always has the ability to cheat. So you can never be sure, and you always have to be like working on yourself on guard, increasing your SMV, doing all these things to try to mitigate the chance of getting cheated on. And even that, it may not be enough. It may still happen to you. Even a woman with high tier self-control and morality may succumb to the temptation because of the sheer number of times she gets hit on by highly attractive men. And as we went over in the first of my additional reasons, since men have a much stronger drive to dominate other people and beat the competition. So other men, they get an ego boost from stealing your girl. They are looking to cuck you. That's the male nature to dominate the competition, right? And that is just brutal. You cannot escape this, even if you're in a monogamous relationship with a woman of high, very strong moral values. It still may happen to you. You're still going to have to deal with the competition from other men, many of whom are much higher SMV than you. Here's the harsh reality, and maybe you've heard this red pill quote from red pill YouTubers before. She's not yours, it's just your turn. For a man, finding a woman who's very unlikely to ever cheat on him is very hard. But for a woman, finding a man who is very unlikely to ever cheat on her is easy. And another harsh reality is that many sub-5 males who are money max or status max, they find themselves to be victims of adultery later on because the physical attraction was never there in their relationships. What if you just get a woman with high purity, strong moral values? Well, that is very difficult because getting a woman at all, that is already hard enough for most men. And beggars can't be choosers. The more filters you have, the harder it gets. Beggars can't be choosers, so you may not even be able to afford having a standard that you only want a woman with high loyalty and high honesty, right? And for women, the thing is about men that they may not have good moral character. But even most of them who don't have good moral character, they will still not cheat because they just lack the ability to. So for women to find a man who won't cheat on them, it's not difficult. You don't even need to find a man of good moral character, though of course it would be preferable. Women don't need to find men with top-tier morality and maxed-out loyalty just to avoid getting cheated on and dumped into oblivion. Just a man who isn't a massive douche would be fine. But for a man, even a woman of very high moral character might still succumb to the onslaught of unending attention she gets from men of highly attractive SMV. The third additional reason is that bedroom fun time enjoyment is hugely greater for women. And by this, I'm talking about how the female climax is much more pleasurable than the male climax. I'm putting up some evidence here. I'm not going to read it out loud, but you can read this here. So it lasts longer. It feels better. There's a lot of evidence and anecdotes that support this. It is just much more intense. It is also full body as opposed to concentrated, in a specific spot only. It's much more full body. It is a much more exhilarating experience. And granted, it does happen less often. I read that it happened on an article. It happens about 60% of the time, compared to men is 95% of the time. But I think the less frequency is worth it. It is completely outweighed by the much more pleasure. So let's look at this from a hedonistic perspective, okay? The sheer ease of pleasure gain. We're talking about the reward to effort ratio. So let's say a woman's bedroom fun time experience is 5 times as pleasurable as a man's. Let's also say getting laid for a woman is 10 times as easy as it is for a man. And this means that it is 50 times as easy, okay, 50 times as easy for the woman to acquire bedroom fun time pleasure than it is for the man. So when it comes to the reward to effort ratio, for the same amount of effort, the woman would experience 50 times as much reward compared to the male, bro. 50 times the reward per unit of effort. Just take in the sheer hedonistic efficiency of this. It's brutal. It's just brutal. Well guys, that's it for the video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to Turbo Black Pill. I have over 100 high-effort videos planned. I'd like you to leave a comment down below to share any thoughts you have about the points I made. Do you disagree, agree with anything? Don't forget to click that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching this, and I'll see you in the next video.